سلطانك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الله به الغمة وجاهد في سبيل ربه حتى أتاه اليقين. اللهم اجزه عنا وعن والدينا وعن الإسلام والمسلمين خير ما جازيت به نبيا عن قومه ورسولا عن أمته. اللهم أحينا على سنته وتوفنا على ملته وأوردنا حوضه واسقنا من يده الشريفة شربة هنيئة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا. ثم أما بعد. We all know that Islam is a universal, global religion. It did not come only to a local community, but rather we believe that Islam was sent as mercy to all mankind, and it is the final authentic religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has approved. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. We also know, as Islam starts spreading everywhere in the world, Islam interacted with various cultures. And the beauty of Islam is that it can easily accommodate these different cultures. And the big question comes in this discussion is, which one affects the other? Is it the religion, in this case Islam, influences the local culture, or it is the local culture also has some influence on how Islam is interpreted and practiced? There's huge discussion about this subject from religious, historical, and sociologist perspective. There's a book, by the way, called What is Islam? Huge book, more than 700 pages. What is Islam? And kind of not easy reading. It talks mainly about this subject. We know that there are two theories. One is that it is the religion that comes to a culture and changes it, and everybody should abide by the laws and the rules of this message. It's one Sharia, everybody has to follow Sharia, regardless of their race or geographic location, and so on and so forth. So religion is more powerful and affects the culture, and all cultures must submit to one religion, one Sharia, one law from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other theory basically suggests that actually local culture dictates which part of Islam to be followed or practiced or emphasized, and which parts to be either neglected or rejected altogether. We also know that Islam, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, did not come with the intention of replacing all systems with new systems. I'm talking about the social, economical, and political systems that did exist before Islam. But rather, Islamic way is systematically changing corrupt systems with Islamic systems based on accurate assessment of these systems. So Islam comes to Arabia, for example, and Islam found very good customs. Islam actually approved it and became Islamic. In fact, what we call today Islamic nikah or marriage, this traditional Islamic nikah did exist before Islam, but it was one of 4 different kinds of nikah, according to the very famous hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, who talked about the 4 types of nikah. 3 of them are disgusting, and they call it nikah still. But one of them is the one we're practicing now. So Islam approved it. A man would go to the family of the woman and ask for her hand, and the family approve or disapprove. If they approve him, then they arrange the nikah and they become husband and wife. And everybody knows that. And they have like wedding parties and so on. So exactly what we do now. Islam, of course, added some details here and there, what to say, and and so on and so forth. But Islam again assesses, or Islam examines or assesses these systems and then approve or disapprove based on the ethical standard that Islam established. So whatever is ethical, Islam approves and becomes Islamic. And whatever is unfair or unethical, then Islam disapproves. Either disapprove it altogether or replace it with another ethical system. Or doing business in general, it's a necessity. People have to have business, but Islam came and said, okay, this part of business is unethical, riba, lending money with interest, that's unacceptable. So this part of business is not approved. And replace it with other systems. So we call the time, the pre-Islamic era, we call it the Jahiliyyah time. And the word Jahiliyyah comes from Jahl. Jahl means ignorance, the time of ignorance. And this particularly refers to the bad customs that exist in the pre-Islamic era. Otherwise, there's good customs that did exist before Islam. So when we say Jahiliyyah, we are referring to the bad side of the customs that exist before Islam. But in this time, pre-Islamic era, there are so many good customs, like generosity. Arabs were known for being generous. Bravery, they are so brave. They do not tolerate humiliation. They help those who are in need. They provide protection for the weak ones. Hilf al-Fudul actually established before Islam, when a bunch of the leaders of Quraysh came together to support those who are oppressed. So there were some good customs that Islam actually came and participated in and became part of the Islamic tradition. But Islam actually does not replace whole systems, unless the whole system is wrong. But Islam works through system that gradually assess the system and replace what's unethical with what is ethical. The other point of view is that culture also has its own influence on how religion is understood and practiced. And here's where the confusion comes. So when a global religion like Islam comes to a conservative society, this conservative society will interpret Islam in a conservative way. They love Islam. Islam is beautiful. They like Islam, but because they are so conservative, especially when it comes to gender relations, so they interpret Islam to support the already existing local culture. I know this could be difficult for some to believe, but this is reality. We can see this with our own eyes. Those African nations that used to visit shrines of saints and so on and so forth, when Islam came to these countries, they liked this Sufi aspect of Islam. That's why most of the African Muslim nations, they have this Sufi tradition as part of the Islamic tradition, or the obvious part of their Islamic tradition. One day I was talking about inheritance in Islam and how Islam gave women the right to inherit their parents or grandparents or uncles, whoever passes away. And after the khutbah, this gentleman came to me and said, Imam, with all due respect, I know what you say is right, but in our custom, we never give our land to our sisters. So when our father passes away and he leaves his land, then sisters do not get part of it. Quran says something, but they're doing something else. للرجال نصيب مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون وللنساء نصيب مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون مما قل منه أو كثر. Men have their own portion and women have their own portion from what their parents have left behind. He said, yeah, that's true. I know this is what Sharia says, but in our culture we don't do that. And I asked, why not? He said, because if we give this land to our sister, then this land becomes her husband's land, and her children will carry the last name of their father, which is not part of our family. So this is how our land will be gone. So we keep this land only among the male children of our father. But we give our sisters whatever they need, we take care of them, and so on and so forth. And he made it so clear, with all due respect, I understand what you're saying, but this is what we do. And that's a Yemeni culture is like, I would say, conservative and religious culture, but when it comes to this particular area, no, cannot do that. Another occasion I was talking about mahr and how mahr is due immediately at the time of nikah, or part of it could be delayed later on. If the husband does not have 100% of the mahr, he can give perhaps 50%, and he promises to pay the other 50% later on. So I said that that's a debt. A man must pay his wife whenever he has the money. But because of this particular culture, it is related to divorce. So in the time of divorce, then you have to pay the mahr. So I was talking about this subject and said that it is a debt and the husband should pay his wife whatever agreed upon mahr. So someone came to me later on and said, Imam, I did follow what you said, and my wife was so scared. And she said, no, I don't need this money. I said, why? Because she thinks that he won't divorce her. And I said, no, I'm not going to divorce. That's the Imam said that this is your money. I'm giving it to you. He said, no, I don't need this money. I want to take it. So this is how it's understood, that mahr is only to be paid in the time of divorce or death. I was teaching a class at 20 State, and this also Yemeni brother, we're talking about the different cultures when it comes to gender relations, and he said that we, in our part of this country, we are very conservative, but our custom when the guest comes, if the house, if the head of the family is not there, but his family is there, his wife and children there, they not only must welcome him, they must entertain him. They cannot just keep him in a room until the head of the family comes back. They must provide food and tea and so on. And I said, well, that's not my understanding of this particular society. But what if something bad happened? If this person, in the absence of the head of the family, did something wrong? It never happens. But if it did happen, then talk about bloodshed. If someone did anything wrong, but usually people live with this kind of culture. So same thing like liberal societies, they interpret Islam in a liberal way and give actually Islam various liberal names. People who are already does not accept the idea that you cannot, you don't have to have an imam or sheikh or murshid. They reject this idea. Some believe that you have to have an imam or murshid takes you to Jannah and you have to follow someone. Others don't believe in that. Some societies are very relaxed when it comes to gender relation and women rights and so on and so forth. Although Islam came and gave women right, and that was kind of surprise to Arabs at that time when Rasulullah ﷺ said, never ever deprive women or prohibit women from coming to the masjid. And Abdullah ibn Umar, we know Abdullah ibn Umar, he's like his father, he just follows the sunnah. And his father was telling him that, said, Wallahi, I will prevent them from saying. And Umar just went to slap him on his face. Said, I'm telling you, Rasulullah said, don't prevent women from going to the masjid, and you say that you will prevent them from going to the masjid? Shame on you. But this is personality. The problem is not here. The problem is when we try to Islamize our local culture and consider it part of Islam. And we spread this interpretation of Islam and judge others as not Islamic. That is very problematic. Islam, as some scholars said, Islam in Africa is very African. Islam in China is very Chinese. Islam in Middle East is very Middle Eastern, right? Islam in Turkey is very Turkish. Muslims build their mosques based on the designs that they have in their own local culture. They dress differently. They celebrate Eid. Everybody celebrates Eid, but they dress differently. They eat different food, and so on and so forth. And that's the beauty of Islam. What's problematic is that when we interpret Islam based on our local culture, that's convenient to us. It makes it convenient. When the religion and culture agree on something, that's perfect, right? So what we do sometimes, consciously or unconsciously, is that we try to Islamize our culture. And we export this version of Islam to others as the authentic version of Islam. And that's why many actually try to Arabize Islam. Yes, Islam started in Arabia, Quran is in Arabic, but we know that Islam is not an Arabic religion. So when you talk about Islamic clothes, Islamic, what do you mean Islamic clothes? Like qamis for men and jilbab for women, and that's the typical way of how Arabs actually dress. But we call it Islamic. I don't know why we don't call the shirwal qamis Islamic. We don't know why we don't call other forms of hijab that Muslim women have are Islamic. But hijab is, yes, this is one of the obligations, but the style of hijab varies from one place to another. But when we try to introduce Islam as an Arab religion, and infuse the Arabic culture into Islam, and then this is what Islam is. As some say that the best thing for men is not to see women, and the best thing for women is not to see men at all, whatsoever. I was giving a lecture in the masjid, and on Friday, we have a Friday lecture, and the ladies come in the back of the same prayer hall where men is. And this gentleman came to me afterwards, was coming from Chicago visiting friends, and he said, Imam, why do you allow women to stay in the masjid? Why don't you keep them in their own women area? I said, what's wrong with that? He said, no, it's haram. Women should not stay in the same place where men are. So I said, why? What's wrong with this? What was the case in the time of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The case in the time of the Prophet was that men are sitting in front of the Prophet, and then women are behind. And behind, by the way, does not mean inferior. It's behind because it's more convenient for women, actually. You don't like to see people behind them when they pray. And there was no curtain or any partition. That was the sunnah of the Prophet. He said, yeah, but people at that time were righteous. Sahaba have taqwa and iman. I told them the masjid of the Prophet was full of hypocrites. Munafiqun. They used to come to the Prophet's masjid. So this argument does not really fly. Additionally, these ladies, some of them are physicians, some of them are professors, some of them are teachers. So they interact with people all the time. Why is halal there and haram here? Where does this sensitivity come from? Where does it come from? And when I started youth program, I said the boys and girls will be in the same hall. And some said, no, we cannot do that. It's haram. I said, well, what do you mean haram? Who said it's haram? Based on what? Bring me an ayah in the Quran or hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, then I will follow you. But actually, Quran and hadith are against your argument. Quran never said separate men from women. Never. Not once. Respect must be there, lowering your gaze, dress modestly. That's true. But where did Islam say that men and women have to be totally separated, cannot see each other? If someone is doing this in their wedding day, I respect that. I'm okay with that. I'm not against this. I'm against saying this is Islam and other ways is not Islamic. So I told this brother, so if you want to follow the sunnah of the Prophet, this is the sunnah of the Prophet. He said, but people at that time were righteous and now they're not. So okay, how often would we change the sunnah of the Prophet based on our understanding to what happened now? It doesn't work this way. So what I'm trying to say is that as religion influence culture, cultures also influence religion. whether we like this or not. And what's unacceptable is that we introduce Islam as we understand it from our cultural perspective. I said, this is Islam. This is why you see always some uncle and aunties, once someone walk in the masjid, they just assess him, they just look at him up and down, then start judging, telling them what to do and what not to do, how to behave, how to dress, and so on, which actually causes many people to stay away from the masjid. Because they understand halal and haram not from Quran and the Sunnah, but because this is how they understood Islam from their own cultural lenses. So how to prevent this, or to overcome this problem? Simply to learn, seek knowledge. To seek knowledge, understand what the Quran says, what the Prophet ﷺ said, in what context, and try to apply it fairly. Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Inna minkum munaffirin." Some of you will cause people to leave Islam altogether because you are so tough and rigid. Ad-dinu yusr, Rasulullah ﷺ said, and he said to Ali radiallahu anhu and Mu'adh when he sent them to Yemen, said, "Yassira wa la tu'assira." Make things easy on people, don't make things difficult on them. وَبَشِّرَا وَلَا تُنَفِّرَا. Give people good news and bushra. Don't keep giving them bad news. إِنَّ هَذَا الدِّينُ يُسْرٌ. This religion is meant to be easy. Islam has never been a burden on people. People actually make Islam a burden on themselves. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله اتقوا الله وأطيعوه إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. نسألك رزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها معادنا. اللهم اجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير واجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث. أصلح لنا يا رب شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين ولا إلى أحد من الناس يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر دينك وكتابك وعبادك الصالحين. اللهم انصر من نصر دينك واجعلنا منهم واخذل من خذل دينك ولا تجعلنا منهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين وحد كلمة المسلمين وارفع راية المسلمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. بالصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.